Hello everybody and welcome to FreeSpirit-TV, information beyond mainstream. Today I'm very happy to present to you Carine Hutsebaut. Carine is from Belgium and she is a psychotherapist, a criminologist, as well as author of books on child sex abusers and child murderers. For over 30 years she has worked as therapist for abused children and she also investigated on pedophiles. In her work as a profiler, she has participated in many sessions and has been able to meet and talk to some of society's worst criminals in prison, including the FBI Center in Quantico in the United States. In addition, she is the founder of ICMAC, the International Center for Molested and Abducted Children, a judicial commissioner for ITNJ, International Tribunal for Natural Justice, has written books in Dutch, French and English, and several movies have been made on the basis of her work. Today we are going to talk about her work experiences and the prevention of pedo-criminality.
Hier noch eine Nachricht in eigener Sache. FreeSpirit-TV ist eines von mehreren Projekten des FreeSpirit-Bewusstseinstrainings. Dieses Training ist ein hervorragendes Konzept für Menschen, die einfach mehr vom Leben wollen. Wenn du dich nach etwas sehnst, sei es, dass du noch glücklicher sein möchtest oder reicher, gesünder oder nach einer tollen Beziehung, wenn du dich beruflich auf deine Vision konzentrieren und noch so einiges anderes verwirklichen möchtest, dann empfehlen wir dir von ganzem Herzen das FreeSpirit Bewusstseinstraining. Du findest es unter www.freespiritinfo.com. Ah ja, und noch etwas. Da immer mehr alternative Kanäle im Internet unterdrückt werden, wissen wir nicht, wie lange wir dort noch senden können. Für den Fall, dass die uns das Licht abdrehen, sei vorbereitet und abonniere daher unbedingt unseren Newsletter auf freespirit-tv.ch. Danke und schön, dass es dich gibt.
Carine, welcome. It's so nice to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Before we jump right into this subject, I would like to know, why did you become a therapist and a profiler? What is your story?
Well, I can say this in one word: anger.
Anger.
Anger. Tremendous anger. Because I've been lied to, as all of the people has been lied to. It started in 1984, with the disappearance of a little boy. He was 6 years old, Gevrije Kavas. And now we are 2018 and there is not the beginning of a trace to that little boy. It was in the center of Brussels, full daylight, nobody saw something. And I had a friend who was a policeman and I asked him, what are you going to do to find this little boy? I had a daughter of that age and I could imagine what it must be. Your child is gone from one minute to the other and it's 6 years old. It needs you and you need your child. Mm. And he said, we are waiting. I said, what do you mean you're waiting? But we are waiting for information.
But the police said that?
The police said that. And now it's still the same. We are 35 years later, it's still the same. Well, so the anger stays. Mm-hmm. They don't know how to approach this. They have no methods. There is a combination. I've been struggling a long time knowing if this, is this wanted? Mm-hmm. Do they want it to be like this? Or is this incompetence? Mm-hmm.
And what both. Is your conclusion? It's both. Okay.
It's both. It's a combination of both. When we are talking about child porn networks, it is not incompetence. Mm-hmm. It is not wanting to touch this. If it is an individual having adopted a child, well, then probably they want to do something about it, but they don't even know how. Mm-hmm. Why? Because they consider the parents as the enemy.
Okay, yeah.
And it's not only my country, it's all over the planet. Mm-hmm. And this has to change. The parents are not the enemy of the system. On the contrary, the system is paid by us taxpayers, also by the parents. So in fact, they are our employers, and we are the bosses. But everything has been, I think from the beginning, turned upside down. We have not to accept this. As soon as parents are not considered as suspects anymore, they have to be implied in the investigation because they know their child. They know the habits, the attitudes, they know everything about their children. And in a broader context, friends, when it's a teenager, friends, family members, and so on. But the parents have to be involved in the investigation and in a briefing once a week with the police. Then maybe we can force them to do their jobs.
And that case motivated you so strongly that you became a profiler yourself.
Yeah, because I could not imagine police sitting there and waiting for somebody to say, oh, I saw it when somebody took the child. You have to be proactive to find the child because offenders know exactly how to abduct a child. They are profilers, they are the best. I mean, they know if this is a high risk victim, a low risk victim. Is this a high risk situation, low risk situation? For instance, a high risk victim is, for instance, a young woman who is a prostitute. She is a high risk victim for herself, but she is a low risk victim to the offender, to the criminal, because, you know, he just goes there, asks for her services, and he goes away with her. Nobody knows where they go. A high risk situation is, in this case, this little boy of 6 running. He was running behind his brother, who was at 50 meters from him. And his brother looked back and saw his little brother coming, and he went through, and all of a sudden he's gone. This means this is in full daylight, a lot of potential witnesses, and a little boy that could have screamed. It's the same with the Dutroux case. This were the 2 children. One child is high risk, 2 children, high risk for the child. 2 children is low risk. And if a criminal take the risk of taking 2 children at a time, wow, you have a tremendous amount of information about the criminal. Because you don't start by robbing the central bank. You start by robbing the little post office in your corner, and then you climb the ladder. It's the same in this kind of crimes. You don't start by abducting 2 little girls in full daylight.
That's very risky.
What does that say about the criminal to me? That he has a certain age. I said in the Dutroux case, he must be between 35 and 40 years of age, and he was 39. When you have that age, you probably are married and probably in a stadium of divorce. You probably have children. And I also said this man is somebody who has been in prison for abduction, enclosing, sequestrating children, closing them up in a room, for instance, and torture. Now, we don't have thousands of this kind of criminals, but the police refused to do a search from who has been in prison for this kind of crimes. And then I said he must live in the triangle Liège, Namur, and Charleroi, which is a triangle from, let's say, 40 kilometers, 40 kilometers, 40 kilometers. So there could only be 1 or 2 of them. But they just said, listen, Mrs. Hutsebaut, we are not in the United States here.
So they didn't take your suggestions? They didn't want to know about you?
No, they were very hostile. The parents were, from Julie and Melissa, these little girls were only 8 years old. They were desperate. Then later on, a year later, I made a profile and gave it to the police with all the specification. Later on, it was fully accurate.
And what did they say then after that?
Nothing.
No comment.
No, nothing. I am the enemy. Because you are part of the corpse or you're not. The corpse will always defend each other. You're one of them, even if they make mistakes. They are one of each other. And not only was I a woman, but I was not a police officer. But we are not talking about this. We are talking about horrendous crimes against children.
Yeah, and you mentioned that there are 5 different types of child abuse. Can you define these 5 different types for us?
Well, I've put them in my book, Child Hunters. There are, for instance, the aggressive, sadistic pedosexual. You have the asocial pedophile. I don't like the word pedophile. I prefer the word pedosexual. You have, for instance, also the pedosexual in regression, which is the most part of the sexual offenders. And you have, for instance, the fixated pedosexual. These are men that can only have sex with children. They are not at all interested in men of their age or women of their age. Only children arouse them. The prognosis for the last one are very bad for treatment. In fact, you have to separate them from society. Some of the sadistic pedocriminals, you can, I don't like the word heal because it's all in the words. It's not a disease, it's a choice. You can repair. I'll use that word. You can repair. It depends on their childhood, what has happened. It's a long work, about 2 years, intensively. It's not easy for the criminal, but the prognosis are better than with fixated pedosexual. For the pedosexual in regression, the prognosis are quite good. In general, they are married, they have children, but they start fantasizing when things go wrong in their lives. They lost a lot of money, or they lost their jobs, or there's a separation with a partner, or something goes wrong. They retreat in fantasies where they can act out on weaker victims.
Okay, and what are the signs a child shows when it is sexually abused? What are the signs there?
Well, we have to be very careful with this because the signs are very often quite similar to children who are suffering from the divorce of their parents.
Okay.
So it needs, 30 years ago it was less because less people divorced. But now we have to take in account that, for example, a child that starts bedwetting, peeing in bed again at the age of 5, you also, not first, but you also have to consider, is there a divorce?
Okay.
Because these are signs also that a child feels insecure, that there is something. Children that are extroverted, they're very open, very social, all of a sudden are introverted. So they don't talk anymore. You can see that they are worried. It's another sign from sexual abuse or divorce or both. So there are several signs of children. Sometimes children show sexual exaggerated sexual interests. For instance, I had a little girl, 3 years old, who couldn't stop touching the sex of a man when a man was in the room, and then asked, "Can I have a treaty now?
Okay.
A cookie?"
All right.
Well,
that's
then,
strange.
Yes. Or she was dancing on a little table on the music of child programs on television. But really sexual. At the age of 3, these parents didn't know what to do anymore. She had 2 brothers, 10 and 12 years old. She couldn't stop touching their sex, their penis. So these people then think we have a pervert child. But then they discovered that it was the daycare mother who brought the child during daytime, and sometimes at night, because the mother was a nurse. and she had to work at night also. Then the child stayed with the daycare mother. But she brought these children to a nightclub who was closed during the day, where they filmed the little children, having sex with adults and all that. It was awfully.
That's terrible.
It's terrible, yes.
How good they came to you and contacted you.
Yeah, and I want to take away also, that's why we have absolutely changed these prevention campaigns, who are without any doubt made by pedosexuals. I have no doubt about it. And the prevention for years now is the child has to learn to say no. Now, I can assure you, I did expertise on men who rape 3-month-old babies. Tell me how these little babies can say no. It is not up to a child to say no. It's up to an adult to say no. And it's time we put the blame where it belongs.
Yeah.
So, yes, that's why I think this is the first time somebody asked me to talk about prevention. And I'm so glad you are these persons. I'm amazed. I was really.
I'm amazed too. That's the first time actually. I thought that would be very important to talk about. Actually, that too, right? Prevention is everything.
Important. Because you give just a free way to offenders. Because I work with both. This is exceptional too. I think I must be one of the only in the world, because I know 20 years ago I had a television program in Australia, Broadcasting Corporation, and we were 3 people. There was, what was his name again, in Arizona? Andrew Wax, who only took the stage for victims. Then there was Ray Wire from the Gracewell Institute. I did practice placement in the UK for the offenders. It was not the defense of, but they stood there for, he stood there for, and I stood for both.
For both, yeah.
And they were amazed in Australia. You have to choose your side.
But it makes sense that you would actually know about both sides, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, how would you want to treat someone?
I don't know. I don't know how others do it. I do know that most have had training as normal psychologists to work with victims. And they give treatment to offenders as if they were victims. No, they are not. Let's be clear about that. Some have been victims in their childhood, and we'll treat that apart.
How many % about? Do we know numbers?
Well, must be a tremendous amount.
High number, right?
High numbers, yes. Who have been victims in their childhood. But that cannot be an excuse.
No, of course not.
To offend other children, to harm other children. Most of people who have been victims of child sex abuse don't become child sex offenders themselves. So it is a choice, it is not a disease.
That's important to know.
If it is a choice, it is not a disease. It means that you're responsible for what you're doing. Well, take the consequences of what you did.
But society tries to convince us, though, that it is a disease.
I don't care.
That's how I feel it.
It is not society. Right? It are the governments. It is the system that wants to convince us. But people feel this is not right. There has been anthropological research on tribes, very primitive tribes in New Guinea and Central America, where they almost only make fire with stones. If somebody touches a child, the whole community will expel the offender. It can be for a month, 6 months, a year, but it is almost impossible to survive in the bush as an individual. You need the tribe. They can come back after a while, and there is no stigmatization, but they know what the consequences are. What is important in this? One, that the victim knows he is the wrong one, not me. Because child sex abuse is almost the only crime where there is confusion about victim and offender. And that's why most of the victims feel ashamed, while it's the offender that should be ashamed, feel guilty. It's not their fault. It's the offender that has to feel guilt And that's all because of these prevention actions.
Okay.
So I don't tell me that this is a coincidence. This is wanted. They want as many abused children as possible because it are the best slaves.
I just wanted to know what is
it
the
are
goal?
the best.
I mean,
it's
what's
all a
the
program.
benefit?
It takes years to all of a sudden you put all these pieces together. You say, I can't believe it. It's a fucking system to keep us low. It's the same with once you've been a victim of rape, you're hurt for life. It's a freaking lie.
So you can get healing.
Of course. But then again, we go to what the society wants and not what governments want or the system wants.
Yeah.
A society is very, very easy. It wants three things. Punishment for the wrongdoer, for the criminal. Reparation, restoration for the victim, if possible, because sometimes the victim is murdered. Not only to the victim, but also towards society, because society is hurt too. When a victim goes bad, family goes bad, the school goes bad, everybody goes bad. Some of the victims become prostitutes, some of the victims become criminals, etc., etc. So it is a larger spectrum than only the victim. So reparation, restoration towards the victim, towards society. And the third point the society wants is relapse prevention. Okay? You will never do it again. That's not that difficult, is it?
Yeah.
And that's what I apply. Why do I work with victims and offenders? And they were stunned in Australia. Probably because I'm not smart enough to do only this or only that. I cannot understand. I understand. I'm going to give you one small example. I had a child sex offender, and he said to me, but the child liked it. No, I'm talking about years ago. And I was thinking, why not? Maybe if he's nice and he's just smooth with the child, maybe the child liked it. I said, how do you know the child liked it? But she was giggling. Yeah. Now, some weeks later, I had the victim in treatment, and I said, I know it's difficult, it's very difficult, but can you tell me when he started to touch you what you did? And she almost closed up because she didn't want to talk about it. She was at that time, I don't know, 12, 13, and the facts were when she was 4 or 5 years old, and but she was still, automutilating to feel. She couldn't reach her feelings anymore. And I'm trying to understand. And she said, well, I didn't know what to do. I said, but you did something, didn't you? And she said, well, I was giggling. I said, why? Because I was so ashamed. I didn't know what to do. So what is your conclusion in this? That is that how do you call it? The perception of the offender was right. She was giggling.
But the interpretation
was wrong.
Was wrong, right. Yeah.
So these are all little pieces. When I saw him back then, I said, you were right, she was giggling. But why do you think she was giggling? And then he said, because she liked it. I said, no, because she was ashamed, because she was powerless, and because she didn't know what to do.
Do you think that the offender actually knew that was maybe just a reaction, or do they just really don't know?
They lie to themselves.
That's what I wanted to ask. They lie to themselves.
And they like to believe their own lie.
So they don't have to look what they did. But back to the victim, just real quick. What are the short as well as long-term consequences for the victim, actually?
It depends if there is help. But most of the time, the children are so confused and so ashamed, they don't talk about it. They don't know what to do with it. The second point is that many victims feel that nobody will believe them. That's a very hard point.
Yeah.
Because it's a good friend of the family. It's the priest of the church. No, that's not possible. So they know, they feel nobody will believe me if I tell this, and I will be expelled of the group, which are big consequences, of course, because it's the wrong person being expelled from a group. And then there are children that are molested by so many people that they start to think, although they feel it is not right, that's life.
And what would you suggest for the parents actually? Can they do something that they would open up and not be so ashamed talking about that, the children? If something happens?
In these prevention campaigns, they are talking about speak with your children, and to the children, talk to someone and all that, but it's not that easy. It is not that easy to do, because many victims think that they are the only one on the planet. And they must be bad, because otherwise who would do something like that to them?
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have such conversations like this
so,
one
yes.
now.
Just on a human level,
right.
It's not your fault. You are chosen. The offender has chosen you. Choosing somebody is an active act. Being chosen is a passive act. You don't even know somebody chose you. Whether it is for a robbery or to murder you or to rape you, you have a part in the crime as a victim, but you have no active part in it.
Yeah.
You know, the active part lays by the person who chooses to do what he's going to do. Well, then he has to take the consequences too. And it's not up to the victim to take the consequences. But it's absolutely wrong to say that once you have been raped, you are broken for the rest of your life. That's not true. Don't believe it. Get out of it and take your life back. It's yours.
Yeah, that's good to know. It's important to know.
Yes, it's important. Get off of all these slogans. They are lies. It was not up to you as a victim to say no. Because most of the time these children are too young and even.
Right.
It's up to the offender. He knows, because otherwise he would rape children in plain sight of everybody.
That's true.
Because he has the right. He thinks he has the right. Well, do it then on the marketplace where everybody is present. But that they won't do, you know, because they know, they're committing a crime.
Yeah.
And it's up to them to say no. Well, they have to know one thing. We are watching them.
We are. What is the impact of child sex abuse on society?
It's tremendous. The cost of, if I have to speak in costs, then, you know, governments understand this kind of language and systems too. But anyway, it's the people who pay. You have women and boys with psychosomatic diseases, but it costs money. With psychological diseases, getting psychiatry, be infertile, while they can't find what the reason is, because the victim is not talking about it and cannot talk about it. And no doctors ask, have you been sexually molested when you were a child? They don't ask it. They don't have this in their program of university neither. Some of the victims feel so bad, they think they can only get something if they give their body as payment, you see. Others are so angry, and more girls, not only boy victims, that they become very dangerous criminals. Because they are angry at society. This society wasn't there to help him when he was a little boy, or her as a little girl. So why would they be loyal to a system that is not there and has never been there for them? So yes, the consequences for society are tremendous.
So now, since we know what child sex abuse is about, let's look at the abuser again. What is a child sex abuser? You abuser, you said there are two categories?
Yeah, the methodical category and the
6
impulsive.
Yeah.
Yes?
Could you define them?
Well, the methodical ones are most of the time have a higher EQ than the impulsive types. They plan their act. They know on beforehand, before they are going to abduct a child, where they're going to throw the body. So everything is planned. They fantasized about it, and even the fantasize is most of the time more exciting than the act. While in general, he is married, he has children, he has a high-rank profession, so nobody will think he is somebody who could do this. The impulsive one is one who has so much social problems that he's not even in a position to have a relationship with a peer, a woman or a man. He most of the time he lives alone. He's a bit a weirdo. Everybody knows him. He's a bit weird, but okay. We'll tolerate him.
It, okay.
Most of the time he has no car, he can't drive, he has no driver's license, his skills are low. When he works, it is more labor and not with the head,
Or high positions.
Yeah.
Okay.
When you have, when a child is missing and there is no trace of it within 4 months, 5 months, you probably have to do with a methodical type. When a child or a victim, it has been found within a lapse of time of, let's say, a month, 3-4 months, you have probably to do with an impulsive type. This means that for both, it's a different approach to solve the crime. With a programmed, an organized one, you need to find the methodical one first, because he knows where the body is. And if you don't have the criminal first, really the chances are very low that you will find the victim. With an impulsive one, you find the victim, and from there on you can find the criminal. So it's completely the opposite down.
Okay, and is it maybe because the impulsive one wants to get caught at all?
No, absolutely not.
Or is it just sloppy?
This is again, they don't want to get caught. I hear this very often in movies.
Yeah, that's why I'm asking.
That's not true. They don't want to get caught, but they become so arrogant that they make mistakes and then they're caught. And you can interpret it as being, you wanted to be caught. Absolutely not. They always go further and further. Doesn't make sense anyway. If you make one victim, the chances are low that you get captured. It's like burglary, But if you start breaking in, stealing things everywhere, the chances are likely that one day they find you. Now, the difference between the two is that the methodical type will more often have problems with himself that he wants to resolve. That's why you don't find the victim. With impulsive types, they have problems with society. And look, I hurt society, and everybody can see.
Okay.
You see?
Revenge
towards society. It's more clear. While a methodical one feels that I should have done this, I should have done that. But they forget that they were little boys when they were hurt.
It's like a perfectionist kind of problem.
They become perfectionists, but they think I should have been a man. I should have defended myself. But they forget then they are 30 or 40 years old now. They forget this little boy of 4 who was defenseless against his own offender. But they take this with them and they're angry at themselves, while the impulsive type is angry at society for not have been there when he needed them.
And that's their motives, actually, why they do it. Or are there other motives?
Motives, no, it's more a modus operandi. The motive is something else. The motive is in most of the cases anger. Rage, especially when things go wrong.
And not being able to resolve that rage by themselves.
No.
So
some do some
act out.
sports and dangerous sports, but sometimes they come to a point that that's not enough anymore. Somebody's gonna pay for my hurt.
Mm-hmm.
And they prefer a weaker one, of course, because they cannot allow themselves to lose again against somebody more powerful.
So they should win then?
They have to win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
How high is actually the relapse of these kind of offenders?
Child sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
The relapse is the highest of all kinds of crimes. Without specialized treatment, a child molester relapses is at 98% within an average time of 4 days after being released from prison.
And why is that?
Because the urge is there. They did not solve the problem.
Because they don't get a treatment that works either.
No. Or they don't get a treatment at all. Mm-hmm. And so they think they go in prison, they think, okay, I paid my invoice and I can start again. And they say it. I work with them, they say it.
Okay. Do they have to get treatment at all? Or is that optional?
Well, no,
for them?
But then keep them in prison and away from society where there are children and vulnerable people. No, they don't have to be in treatment. Mm-hmm. But put them aside then.
Mm-hmm. And when you're investigating a child sex offender, you are using a contract of non-confidentiality.
Yes.
Can you explain to us what it is and why you're using that?
The more time passes by, the more smart I get.
That's good.
And I see, whether it is the police departments, the justice departments, I don't speak about medical reports because that's normal, that there is secrecy.
Yeah.
Everybody has to know what diseases you have. That's something else. But everything that has to do with crime and secrecy serves the criminal so well. Mm-hmm. You as a victim will have no access to your file because of professional secrecy. When I have child sex offenders in treatment, they have to sign a contract of non-confidentiality. This means that their file can and will be shared with victims if they want to, the Justice Department, the police departments, the probation officer. I don't mean the media and all in the world, but specifically the people involved in this have the right to know what I am doing with this person. Because I replace imprisonment. When they're in prison, it's okay. But once they're out and they are my responsibility, I have the duty to share with the community what I'm doing with them. Is this safe or are you just talking? What is this? Mm-hmm. And this works perfectly. Not more than 2 weeks ago, one of the victims of a child, the victims of a sex criminal wanted to take part for 2 hours in a treatment we have. I said, it's okay. It was a bit weird, but she has to come from, let's say, half an hour. And then all of a sudden, I got the offender, and he called me and he said, I have something weird, because he also lives in the same city. That victim that wants to be present tonight, she wants to come with me in my car. Okay. I said, great, nice.
Special.
Do you feel okay with it? He said, yes, but it's weird. I said, okay, if she wants to come with you because she knew him, it's okay, but don't talk about the facts, okay? Because I don't know if this is going to blow up. We'll talk about it in my office, okay? And she was so delighted when she saw how I treated the offender. And we were having conversations, and I said, whoa, let's call him X. Mm-hmm. Don't you think, what do you think about her? What do you think when she says, I want to stay friends, but I want to understand why you did it? And maybe I'll be able to forgive you. And he was just, I said, what do you think? I can't believe my ears, he said. She's willing to forgive me? I said, you heard her. I can't believe that. He says, and I said, tell her what happens now. Because a human being is it's like a snowman, 3 balls. The rational one, what is feeling and heart and sexually. And with those people, this is broken.
Yeah. So
when there is too much energy in the rational ball, it explodes and it skips this and goes to the sexual ball where it acts out. I say, tell her, because I made a report also of 30 pages and she had a copy of it. And wow, she didn't know that this was happening in the offender. It didn't make it right, but at least she understood. This is the first question victims ask, why? Why me? You know, so I consider this because I work with victims too. And then he said, well, listen, Anne, I understand fully that what I did is unacceptable. Really, it is so criminal, I can't even describe it, he said. But I can't feel it. Okay.
That's very honest.
I can't reach my feelings. And then she's sitting there. And of course, I made a profile of his childhood. Now, it could have been a serial offender with this profile. And she understood. Okay. So I told her, now we're working on this hard brain. You know, this has to be in harmony. Everything has to be in harmony. Yeah. And then he will be unable to do such things.
Well, that's true. And it's really important.
Yeah. I said to him, okay, reparation. I said, what do you want? You want money? Because he has to be in trial, I think, in a few months. She says, no. In fact, no. I said, what do you want? Because you are in the right place to say what punishment you want for him, because he hurt you. And then she said, I think he's punished enough. It has been in the newspapers all over the country. He lost his job, he lost his credibility, he lost his groups of sport. Maybe I want 200 euros. Because it's a double crime. Not only did he abuse my trust because we knew each other, but then again he put the picture on the darknet. So these are 2 crimes. Okay. I want 100 euros for each crime. I said, is that okay with you? Because most of the time, you know, it goes before a court and then it's 10,000 of euros and the parents use this to buy a new family car and the victim is there. I cannot accept
it's higher
this.
Normally.
Right? Yeah. So, and she said, and I want him to continue his therapy, and sometimes I want to be part of it. I said, do you agree? I said to him. He was completely confused. He didn't know what to say. He said, yes, of course. And I said, okay, and then you're going to pay for her treatment. And I'm going to control this every month. If she wants to go in therapy somewhere, you're going to pay the invoices.
That's a good idea.
Okay?
Yeah.
And he agreed.
That's crazy.
I mean, it doesn't have to be war.
Yeah, but that's a special case, right? Or is it?
No,
is
most
it
of
happening?
the time. Yeah, most of the
time, really.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it is a question of. Yeah, we can talk about it. It's a secret of the treatment. It's a secret of this investigation. No, let's be human, okay?
Yeah,
and listen to what the victim wants. This is priority. And then again, if I hear victims saying, I want 100,000 of euros of recompensation, we'll talk. Will you feel better then?
Probably not, right?
No. Because you have to consider when the offender is getting into a negative spiral, he's going to relapse. If he will lose his job again, if he will not be able to pay his rent, he has no home, then what will stop him? He needs to have something he has to lose to not reoffend.
Something has to lose.
If he is not somebody who has nothing to lose, why not reoffending feels so good? Feels so good. In my first book, Child Vendors, I put this on a level we can understand. For instance, you're working really very hard and your boss is never happy, and you stay hours and hours and weekends and you work in it, but you can't turn against him because then he can fire you. So you're there with all your stress and you're driving home and you're aggressive, you come home and all of a sudden you see this beautiful antique vase. You grab it and you throw it against the wall. It feels so good. Of course, afterwards you will say, "Oh God, my beautiful vase."
In that moment,
but
it feels
you will
good.
connect it each time with the sentiment, the feeling of relief.
Okay.
Even years later, you will say, "Oh, it felt so good." Well, replace the vase with a child. It's the same. I shouldn't have done it. I shouldn't have murdered it, but all my anger, all my frustration was gone. So, in fact, maybe it's strange to say that, it is easy to treat child sex offenders. Now, probably I'm going to start a training academy in the United States.
I just wanted to say, you should teach actually
Well, I'm not
police
a
or
teacher,
therapy.
I'm very
therapist.
down to earth and very direct.
But it's so important. It's such an important
Yes,
work
it's
you're
important.
doing in this way.
But in Europe, it's impossible. They boycott you. You have not even started. Yeah.
We'll see. Maybe in the future.
Maybe I'm going to start in the United States and see.
Yeah, you could start there maybe. Yeah. And how many child sex abusers are there actually worldwide? Are
we
there
have no
numbers
idea.
Or
no? I did a study myself some years ago when we had the old Europe, so without Poland and Hungary and all this, and then we were 750 million people. And my study showed that 8 million of them are pedosexuals, which means from lightly touching between the legs to torturing and murdering children. What are we going to do with these 8 million? Put them in gas chambers? But without treatment, they reoffend in 98% of the cases.
It's horrible. And now the number probably is higher.
Oh, sure,
right?
Sure.
I mean, it's growing.
You know, the profit, the money profit in child trafficking is much higher as drug trafficking. Drugs trafficking, and it's nobody takes them. Nobody stops them.
And are there countries that have more sexual offenders than others, or is it spread evenly?
I think it's all over the planet because there are no countries really taking actions against child sex offenders. That's why prevention and widely spread prevention, to let them know we are watching you and it's up to you to say no, are so important. That's why this interview is important. That's why I came to Switzerland, because I can go all over the planet, which I don't do very often anymore, but this is the first time somebody wants to talk about prevention. Yeah.
That's interesting. Now, so far we have talked about the single offender, but there also exist pedophilic networks.
Yes.
Which networks perform child sex abuse? What are we talking about?
I think you will not believe what we are talking about. No, it is so horrendous that even for me, I've seen everything now. Since I'm in the ITNJ, I heard of things I've never heard before because what is abuse? I mean, it's not always sexual, but now like in the United States and probably in Europe too, they force young women to have abortions, and these pieces of the child are cut up in pieces for pharma industry, for beauty products, for
cosmetics.
Organs, cosmetics, that was the word. for organ trafficking, even children. In the United States, I know they have abortions at 7-8 months of pregnancy, forced abortions. Some are used for rape and filmed. I've seen newborn babies. There are pictures on the net. Newborn babies with their umbilical cords being raped by the doctor who delivered the child, and it's on the net.
On the dark net.
On the dark net, yeah. There is no end anymore at perversions. There is no end anymore. I can only hope that hell exists. That's all. That they will not escape. If they escape here from punishment and reparation, that they will be punished when they die. And that they meet their judge. Maybe
it's themselves then. Have to look at what they've done.
It seems to be something like this, yes, and you
I don't know,
are worse than a human judge, but this has to stop, because the consequences on society are tremendous.
That's so hard to imagine that these things exist.
Because it's in the dark, it's in secret, it's in,
it's hidden.
That's why I am absolutely for, not with the victim, but with offenders, contract of non-confidentiality. And because most of the psychologists, if they treat it well, because they treat them as victims, so they feel so good, I'm a victim. No, you're an offender. They are not allowed to make expertises because, secret of... No, we are working with criminals, and society has to know what we are doing with them. That's my responsibility, and I'm ready to take it. I've always been.
That's very courageous. Have you ever
been threatened? Normal.
Have you ever been threatened at all?
Oh yes. They try to kill me, but especially networks, of course. In an operation room when I had a thyroid operation, somebody came in, but then again, but I was unconscious, so I don't know. I was under anesthesia, but I had a friend with me who is a doctor, because I had death threats. It made me laugh. I felt important too. Everybody had death threats. I didn't have that. And I'm the only one working since 35 years in this area. So I was a bit, flattered. And I told a friend who is a doctor, I said, I have my own death threats. And she said, I'm going to be in the operation room. And if she would not have been there, I would not have been sitting here.
That's crazy. And are these threats always coming from satanistic networks, or are there other networks
where money goes around? Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Before we go to the question why they do what they do, can you explain to us what these kind of networks do to children in their rituals? You just mentioned something with the doctor. Do you know other facts?
That wasn't even a ritual. This was...
No, that was not a ritual, but...
No, a personal thing. In rituals, it's very different. The people I've heard the testimonies on, the witnesses, in these very organized networks, there are 2 items coming back. I made the connection with 2 items. I'm very analytical. It's not even difficult for me. I just wait, I put all the information around me, and I remember what I all have around me when I have no answers to these questions. I just don't throw it away, I keep everything. And then one day you have, oh, wait, this is interesting. I have something somewhere, must be here. And you put it together, and there it is. The things that I found out now is that 2 major things are involved in these organized, brutal, awful networks, and that's military and church. Always. Be it Mormons, be it Jehovah's, be it Christians, be it, Catholics, be it is always in this matter. Why? Because they are organized all over the world. They are all over the world.
They organize themselves well.
Yeah, because the churches for hundreds of years that they have their missionaries all over and their Jesuits all over, and you know, but it doesn't mean that the Bible or what's left of it and the instructions of Christ are bad. On the contrary, but what we see now, first they hooked everybody into this, and you can never kill somebody. You have to respect your parents. You know, those 10 commandments. They are okay. They're perfectly okay to help people get structured and know what to do, not what to do. But now, all of a sudden, since, I don't know, 5-10 years, they're taking all these symbols and traditions away from the people. Why? Isn't it evident why? Isn't it evident? Even Christmas tree. We are not allowed to say Christmas tree anymore in Belgium.
That's crazy.
Winter tree.
Yeah.
Fuck you. It's Christmas tree. It's my tradition, and I will respect my tradition and my culture. End of story. I don't know, we have Santa Claus, but not the Santa Claus with Christmas. We have the one, the 6th of November.
Yeah, we have that one too.
And he has a black man with him. Now, the black man was to clean the
chimney.
The chimney. All of a sudden, he is black African. It's not true. He has to clean the chimney so that Santa Claus can get in to put the parcels. Everything they use to destroy our traditions.
And why is that? What do you think?
Because people hang on this. They take everything away from the people. And then you feel lost. It's okay, as long as you're a slave. Pay your taxes, shut your mouth, and do what we tell you to do. I agree, I assure you, I will never be a slave. Never. That's why on my website I started with the Song of Angry People. Maybe you can show it at the end, where I've put pictures in with prevention, and people can go to my website, www.ICMAC There you can see what everybody should distribute all over the planet. To show the offenders and the criminals, we're watching you, you're not getting away with it. It's up to you to say no. I'll never be a victim again.